I want to be like Bernie and tell you that we had a good night last night. Um, well, Bernie did. Not everyone else did. So he didn't have as good a year as last time. I agree. So I want to welcome everyone to tonight's technology conference and discussion. I'm Craig Ferranti. I got my BSBA from Washington U back in 1977. I went to grad school at University of Texas and I got my accounting and finance master's. Then I went to Price Waterhouse for about 10 years, started my own practice 29 years ago, and I focus on entrepreneurs and restaurants. I've owned a bunch of restaurants here locally. You might be familiar with some of them, City Cafe, Cafe Brazil, Spazzo's Pizza, Rusty Taco, Crystal's Pizza. So I've sort of become a restaurant entrepreneur. And now recently I bought a manufacturing company over in the Dallas Industrial District here about 4 months ago because I kept being a CFO and a CPA, but I wasn't a CEO. So I wanted to be a CEO, so I went and bought my own company. So now I get to be CEO. So my WashU background has been phenomenal for me in terms of giving me a very wide breadth and making me be open to lots of opportunities. And so I hope that our discussion tonight gives you guys a lot of ideas because Gene's done a lot of great things and it'll give you guys some input as to places you can go and how you can look at the world maybe a little bit differently. So Washington U. Olin meets you at the gateway of ideas, innovation, and inspiration with informative and timely speakers and events. I'm very happy to be here tonight for such an interesting topic. I promise to get to the presentation in just a few minutes. But first, please allow me to introduce Sarah Hartman from WashU Olin's Graduate Program Office. Sarah?
Hello, everybody. So my name is Sarah Hartman. I'm the Assistant Director of Talent Acquisition at Olin Business School. I just wanted to share a couple updates with you guys. I don't know if you've heard, but Poets and Quants actually did just name us the full-time program, the best program of the year. So we're incredibly proud and incredibly excited about that. Another update, our full-time program actually was revamped this year. So they have a global immersion on the front end. So last year we took about 100 students across the globe in about 38 days. So they started in St. Louis, they went to Washington, D.C., Barcelona, and then they made their way to China. So this year, they're going to go from St. Louis, D.C., Barcelona, and then they will go to Paris and in Lima, Peru, and then they will have the option to go to Machu Picchu, which is super cool. I'm actually really jealous. I might have to join with them. And then the Executive MBA also got revamped this year, so they have 4 residencies during their program. Again, St. Louis, DC, and then they usually go to Shanghai and Beijing. This year they will be going to Argentina. So a lot of changes are happening in our programs. Some things to look forward to in 2020. We did just open state-of-the-art facility, Center for Digital Education. Obviously, the whole point of that is to bring or extend the reach of the school outside of the St. Louis regional area. So we want to extend our programs out to those who do not live here. So we're bringing online learning onto our existing programs. So stay tuned for that. So if anyone has any questions about our programs or what's going on at Olin, find my table outside and I'm happy to share some more with you.
Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah told you, if anyone is interested, just see her outside at her table after the presentation. Okay. I'd also like to recognize 2 more WashU Olin representatives, Ken Dunson and Sonny Bellows. I've known Sonny for about 15 years now, it seems. We've been on the Elliott Society together and stuff. She's a joy to work with, so make sure that you seek her out and also Ken and talk to them about what they can do with you in relation to the Olin Business School. So now I'm going to introduce our speaker tonight, Gene Austin. Gene is the president and CEO of Quorum Software, a leading provider of financial and operations software for the oil and gas industry. Gene has more than 30 years of experience at the helm of high-growth tech businesses. He began his career in 1982 as a sales representative for HP and rose through the ranks at several firms before joining CareerBuilder.com as employee number 10. And he helped to lead the firm through a 1999 IPO. Later, Gene served as CEO for two software companies, Convio and Bazaar Voice, leading both to successful exits for investors, one in a 2010 IPO, the other in a private equity sale in 2018. In January 2019, Gene joined Quorum Software as president and CEO. Also, last year, Gene's leadership and career achievement was recognized with an Olin Distinguished Alumni Award, which is bestowed on alumni for their progressive thinking, high standards, uncompromising integrity, commitment, courage, and confidence. Without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Gene Austin.
Thanks, Craig. Hey, good evening, everybody. It's great to be with you. I'm excited about being able to talk to you all. I have to tell you that when the WashU team said, "Hey, we'd like you to come up and speak," and I said, "Sure, be happy to." And then a couple months later, they go, "So what are you going to talk about?" And it's like, "Well, okay, guess it's on me." So I'm going to spend time with you talking about kind of a little bit about my career, but also a lot of learnings that I've had, both that I talk to a lot of young people about when they're going through their career, but also a lot of things I've learned as a CEO. And so I want to make sure that I spend time on both for you, and I hope you have, please, if you have questions, I certainly want to entertain those as well, because this is really, hopefully, going to be a dialogue. I'm happy to be a member of the Olin family. I have to tell you, I was blown away when I was back on campus. I hadn't been back on campus in a few years, last year for my award. And I was also really happy to see technology taking charge at Olin a little bit, because when I was at Olin in 1987, I was the only guy from tech, and everybody thought I was a geek back then. So I'm glad to be now part of a growing community at the Olin area. So let's talk first a little bit about my pre-CEO life and things I learned, and those really become kind of coaching points that I give to young people that talk to me about their careers, and then we'll move into the CEO years and we can talk more about that. So it all began in 1983 here in Big D. There's yours truly right there. Yes, I did have hair at one time. This is the major account sales organization for Hewlett-Packard out of the Richardson, Texas office. We are all rocking ties back then. No guy, I think I wear 3 ties a year now. And the ladies, well, I'm not going to comment about the attire back then for them, but you guys can see it's been a long time, and I see a few people leaning over going, "This guy's really old." We all had name tags back then, and if you were technical, kind of one of the really technical guys, you tended to wear your name tag on your tie to double as a tie clip to show how smart you were. This is the first thing I sold. This is a HP 9845 engineering computer system. It had 64 kilobytes of memory. If you're under 40 years old, you may not know what a kilobyte is. It had a built-in thermal printer. The problem with the thermal printer is you needed to show somebody what you had within 72 hours, or else the light would take the ink right off the paper, and you'd have a blank piece of paper. Built-in cassette drive to back up your basic program. This bad boy sold for $40,000. As I was preparing my presentation, I was doing the best I could to figure out how many of these would equal the performance of this. And I think, it's hard, I Googled, I did all kinds of stuff to try to get processor speeds and gigahertz and all that. I think it's 35. 35 of those to equal the power of the iPhone. And I will tell you, I've spent my entire career in technology, and tech gets a lot of raps right now. We're really taking it on the chin with data privacy. We're taking it on the chin with a lot of different areas. But the amount of impact that I have witnessed myself of technology on life has been astounding, and I think it's been a blow-away for me, and it just keeps on going. And I'm a very proud member of the tech community. So that leads me to my first lesson, and this is, again, when a young person comes into my office and talks about their career and what they're struggling with and what they're thinking about, and maybe some of their goals are coming at, I always try to coach them to spend time on the front line. And what I mean by that is at the point of where the company and the customer interact. And I don't care if it's sales, support, services, it doesn't really matter. But that interaction can shape the way you think as a business leader for the rest of your life, which it has me. The 3 or 4 years I spent selling, experiencing in sales the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and going through negotiations and turn down and rejection and having to craft and negotiate deals, all of that is used down the road in your life as a leader, whether you go into the finance track, a CEO, or what have you. And so, I always coach people, get in front of customers as much as you can in your early years, because it will make you a much better business leader. I was the first class at Simon Hall. I've been calling it the new building for 25 years. I finally stopped calling it the new building. I was the only tech person, I should say. I made a conscious effort to not go into technology for my internship. I went to Ralston Purina and was a member of the High Pro dog food product team, brand team, and we had a really interesting experiment going on over the summer I was there. High Pro, ingredients were starting to get hot in dog food at the time. What am I putting in Fido's, stomach? And so High Pro really went down this path of digestible. We have the most digestible food. It's very little waste, etc. Well, out at Purina Farms, which is out in the west side of St. Louis, I am a St. Louisan, by the way, as well, they have a dog laboratory, if you will. And so we spent several weeks feeding them High Pro and feeding them Brand X and measuring what came out. So that's how I spent my summer. Chased me right back to technology when I graduated from Simon Hall. So next up, one of the things I talk about is with young people is, what's the hurry? It's amazing the expectation young people have about advancement right now. And, I am subject to, my son told me, hey, Dad, if you're in front of a bunch of young people, you might hear a couple of okay boomers as I make some kind of boomer comment. But people are in too big a hurry career-wise in many cases. And I always tell them to ask yourself 5 questions. And I actually got this from a fellow CEO. Are you growing? Meaning, are you continually getting more responsibility? Are you learning? Are you learning and continuing to learn about what the company, the role, the position you're in? Are you having fun? Is it a fun team? Does your boss have your back? Right? And the biggest reason employees become disgruntled is the relationship with their manager. It's not pay. It's usually their manager. And then lastly, do you have a plan for your future? Not the 5-10-year plan, but an immediate plan. Have you sat down and said, hey, here I am. What should I look forward to? What should my goals be 6, 12, 24 months from now? Too many people are in a hurry. And what happens, I see this over and over again, is they kind of throw up their hands, they get in a hurry, they jump to another job, and 6 months later, they're back in the market. And it happens all the time. And so I always coach them to take those 5 questions, look at it, settle in on thinking about it, and you will get to where you want to be. You will get paid monetarily. You will get paid responsibility-wise. But don't be in a hurry. Enjoy the journey. Skills development and eliminating what you don't like are the 2 things people should be focused on, in my opinion, for the first 15 to 20 years. Building skills and saying, I don't want to be an accountant. I'm pretty sure I don't want to do that. right? Move on to the next thing, those types of things. And that's, something as you work with your teams and your organization, hopefully that might be helpful for you. My skills development were these 4 companies. 3 of them are no longer. HP's, I think, trying to be bought by Xerox, who's come back from the dead, I guess, to buy HP. They've got a tender offer out, and they're trying to take them. These organizations, I moved when I came out of school. I became a product. I focused a lot on the product side and the marketing side in all these companies. And spent a lot of time, again, moving across. I took a lot of lateral jobs. I moved to lateral positions. I believed in just getting smarter. I always saw myself as a general manager of a division one day. I never saw myself as a CEO for a long time. But just skills development and learning, I was really happy to do that. And as a former salesperson, I was really pretty good at marketing because I understood what was going on in the mind of the sales organization. But I did have a significant bump and bruise on the way. And it leads me to my third talk, which is expect them. Expect bumps and bruises, and they're a good thing. So at Sequent Computer, which was one of those organizations up there, I walked in 8 o'clock on a Monday morning and was fired by my vice president of marketing. I was director of marketing at the time, and by 8:30 I was heading out the front door, and by 8:45 I was pulling up to a driveway with my wife crying because she kind of suspected something was up because I suspected something was up over the weekend. I had been the director of marketing and done a lot of things at Sequent, and we had gone through VPs of marketing 3 or 4 times. And the 4th guy came in. He and I were not a great chemistry match. He was more, he was a Norwegian background guy, very quiet, very kind of stoic, very smart. And we didn't click chemistry-wise. And I just kind of took off and just said, look, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go. And I did not invest in him. I did not invest in what he wanted. I did not invest in building the relationship with him. And he got to where, he just didn't think I was on his team. I was doing things counterproductive to him. So he fired me, and I'm out. I'm on the street. The CEO loved me, didn't go to bat for me. The chairman of the board really liked me, didn't go to bat for me because basically they brought this guy in. They've got to give him a chance to do his own thing. So, wow, big setback. I had to spend a lot of time kind of reassessing what happened. And I learned really quickly a bunch of lessons about leadership. Probably the biggest lesson was I was in win for Gene mode. I was goal-oriented, I was competitive, and it was like, let's get it done, let's get it done. And I didn't realize that at times I left tire tracks on people all around me trying to get stuff done, instead of bringing them together and winning for everybody, thinking about winning for the team, thinking about winning for my team. And so I was in win-only mode. I didn't build relationships like I needed to. I just kind of was like, let's go, let's get it done, and go. And I learned a tremendous amount that when you hear some of the things I do as a CEO, it comes from the fact that a team, and the team is really important for success. You cannot succeed as an individual. You have to bring people with you. You cannot get promoted, even though you might be the best person in the organization, and have everybody that just saw you get promoted go, I can't work for this guy. And that would have happened. That would have happened with me the way I was operating. Huge learning, very tough lesson for me, but one of the best things that ever happened to me from a career standpoint. Lastly, before we head into CEO land, I would tell you, if you have the opportunity to join a startup, small company, startup, however you want to do it, do it. And people don't do it because they feel like, how's it going to look on my resume if the thing goes belly up? I don't know about the compensation. I don't want to take a downward move. I don't want to go from director to manager or what have you, because that happens sometimes in startups. But my coaching to you, if you have the opportunity and the willingness, it is a phenomenal experience, bar none. I was able to join a company called careerbuilder.com, which is still out there. It's a massive job board. This was a disruptive play. 50% of the revenues by a newspaper were from job classifieds back in the 1996 timeframe. And the CEO, who I'd met at Legent, which was one of those 4 companies, said, I'm going to start a company that I'm going to use the internet to disrupt the way job seekers and employers communicate. So we set off on that mission. Notice the dates. 1996 it was founded. I joined in the summer of 96. We had to go through a complete identity change and strategy shift about midway, raised $9 million, and I was standing up doing the sales update to the board in January in 1999, and one of the board guys stopped, hit the desk, and said, "We need to go public." And I was excused to go make the quarter and get out of the room, and then it was like, we're gonna go public. And we went public with $20 million in revenue and $20 million in losses. We went out at $12 in May of 1999. By the way, Treasury Secretary Rubin resigned the day we went public, so that's usually not a good day to go public. We still went. We went to $20 during the day. We closed at 16. Today, home run, touchdown, way to go. Back then, huge disappointment. The average IPO went up 70%. And there were 510 IPOs in 1999. The average IPO is about 150 a year, so it was crazy internet bubble stuff. The stock went to 2. We sold the company at 8. It's been private ever since. Every day, my fingerprints were on the company when I left. Good fingerprints, not so good fingerprints if we did something wrong. But we changed, we were quick, we would make decisions quick. We met as a company, everybody was involved, whether you were answering the phones or what. And the velocity of decision making, the velocity of responding to the market was exhilarating. And so I learned in this arena that I could handle a lot of things simultaneously, and I could process a lot as an organ, and I could also learn an amazing amount about what needs to come first in a business, where can you get in trouble. It was here and also at Hewlett-Packard, I learned 2 things as a leader. Finance on one side and HR on the other, because the numbers and the people will get you in trouble fastest as a leader. And so I always kind of live by that as finance and HR I'm always very close to because they are key in being successful as an executive, those 2 areas. Okay, so now we move to the CEO years. I had 2 completely different, Quorum being the 3rd, but it's still very new, 2 completely different CEO opportunities. One was joining a startup, so I had fresh startup experience as the CEO and growing it and having success with it. One, and then Bizarre Voice, a complete turnaround, really challenged business that had a lot of challenges that I had to work through. I'll talk through in just a second. At Convio, it was a software as a service based application, so cloud, right? We now talk about cloud, but back then we called it software as a service, so it's cloud based, targeting nonprofits. And again, like CareerBuilder was very disruptive, Convio was incredibly disruptive. All fundraising was done via direct mail back in 2003. And Convio said, look, we're going to bring this online engine to market and allow you to raise money using the web, email, online fundraising, et cetera. This is before social media. I joined at 55 people and $5 million in revenue, had 1 acquisition of a competitor. We tried to go out in 08, and we filed like 3 weeks before the world fell apart financially. So we refiled again in 2010, and we went out with 80 million in revenues. And then we sold to a competitor at 325 million in 2012. Overall, a fantastic ride and a growth experience that we still meet as Convians and we talk about how much fun we had with this experience. But I did learn a few things. I'm a brand new CEO, wet behind the ears, and I come in 2003, and I'm getting all this press. My company is in Wall Street Journal. My company's in the New York Times. It's in Forbes. We're $6, $7, $8 million in revenue, and it's because a presidential candidate had decided to try the web as a way to raise money. The gentleman was Howard Dean of Vermont. He and a gentleman named Joe Trippi, both of them do the pundit circuit now, decided we're going to go online, and they chose us. They chose us before I even arrived. But I'm like, wow, I just got here, and we're getting all this great press. He became my number one customer, my number one revenue customer, until this. Go. Yeah, sorry.
You know something? If you had told us 1 year ago that we were going to come in third in Iowa, we would have given anything for that. And you know something? You know something? Not only are we going to New Hampshire, Tom Harkin, we're going to South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arizona and North Dakota and New Mexico. And we're going to California and Texas and New York. And we're going to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington and Michigan. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Yeah!
2 weeks later, campaign shuts the doors. My number one customer's gone. As you can see the date, it's January. I had a huge hole in my revenue plan starting out of the chute. But it got a lot better. And this is the time where I said Convio's going to make it, and Convio's going to be a great opportunity to make money for the investors, employees, et cetera. It was on a huge disaster. So Hurricane Katrina hit, and we were powering the fundraising arm for American Red Cross. In fact, Convio has been doing that for many years. And also a lot of animal relief agencies. And if you remember Katrina, it was human suffering, but also a lot of animals. And in 7 days, these organizations raised $90 million. Now, you got to be careful about using a disaster to talk about progress, but we used it as just to say, this is working and people are doing great and join in. But for me, I knew this company was going to get there and we were going to go places. And in fact, in 2010, we went public, and I have a lot to say about the public markets. Most of them aren't that great. This is the best day as a public company. Everything else is not. I mean, it's very difficult. My commentary to all of you would be, if you came to me and said, I really would like to take my company public, I would ask why, and I would start going through, here are the reasons you should be concerned. You will lose 20% of your time as a CEO. This will change the way you can talk to your employees and communicate and rally folks, because you have to be very careful about making people insiders. The cost just to have an audit will be in excess of $1 million, even with a company like this size, that we weren't that big. And it goes on and on and on. And today you have so many other ways to provide liquidity to your investors. The private equity market has money sitting on the shelves, and you're diluted in this event. Everybody gets diluted because the investors get some. So there's all kinds of reasons not to. The biggest reason we went back then was to have capital in a currency to buy other companies. Well, private equity's changed all that as well. So IPOs are very cool. Most of your employees treat them as events, and I keep saying, we just raised money. This is not an event. This is a day. We got to go make it successful. It is an accomplishment, one I'm very proud of, as is my team, but I will probably never go public again, that's for sure. Bazaar Voice, completely different experience. Leading provider of ratings and reviews software. So if you shop at Walmart, Nordstrom's, Best Buy, Samsung, etc., and you read reviews, your chances are you're reading reviews that the Bazaar Voice software allowed that company to solicit from their shoppers. Right? It's a software platform that says, hey, do you want to leave a review? Amazon does its own thing, but everybody else uses Bazaar Voice for the most part. In 2012, 1 year, they went public, huge public offering, did great, acquired their nearest competitor, received a letter in 30 days from the DOJ saying, we're looking at this acquisition. Fired their CEO the same year. You don't fire your CEO the same year you go public. That's usually bad practice. The DOJ sued for the acquisition in January of 13. I looked at that lawsuit before I came on board and said, there's no way, because this is they bought a $15 million company in revenue, 15. And there's no way it could be deemed as, controlling the market, monopolistic. It's too small. So I became CEO. We lost the case in 2014. And I spent the rest of my career managing through the aftermath of being under the shadow of the DOJ for 4 years. We had a 4-year penalty. And finally, he was able to get the company private in 2018. Being a public company and going through this was really tough because our earnings were unpredictable, our revenue was tough. We had a tough time. So George Bush would say that the towers coming down defined his presidency. Barack Obama would say the 2008 financial crisis defined his first term as president. This case defined my term as a CEO. How do I manage? How do I keep my team together? How do I keep the company together and manage through a penalty that the DOJ gave us, all the bad optics we got, and keep the business going in a positive direction? And we were able to get to an okay outcome for investors. It was not like a Convio outcome. But and so now, as I talk about these two, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my philosophy around leadership. And the way I kind of operate as a CEO was instrumental in the success of Convio and the survival, in my opinion, of Bazaar Voice through this. So I first always start with the CEO has to balance 3 things: customers, i.e. the business, employees, and investors. I will tell you that is a balancing act that we all have to go through as CEOs. I personally start with the customer. Right? I always start with how is this decision going to impact customers, and I then quickly go to employees. And I believe if I'm good by both of those 2 constituents, that I will pay off the investor. Generally speaking, that's right. But it's pretty interesting how I've come into companies and we're out of whack here. So at Quorum, the company I currently am at, the company sold itself to Thoma Bravo back in 2018. And I would tell you that the leadership team made a bunch of moves to appease the new investor, and by stripping a bunch of expense out of the company to make it look better at the time. And it damaged both customers because we took a bunch of people out of support as an organization, and employees because employees said, wow, what the hell are they doing? Our support team's cut in half. We're making customers mad. What's going on? So both of those constituencies went like that. And we spent most of 2019 trying to rebuild those investments because they got focused on the investors and the transaction. I went to Bazaar Voice. And Bazaar Voice had great investor relations, in the early days because of their IPO, and had a list of values a mile long and, really great cultural talk and all that stuff, had forgotten their customers. They were innovating inside 4 walls, meaning they weren't validating with customers. They weren't communicating roadmaps. They were not engaging like they should to have a balanced relationship with their customers, a healthy relationship with their customers. So this balancing act, to me, is very important as a CEO. You have to look at it. And again, I will lean. It's hard to do all 3 equally, so I lean towards the left, your left, and the right. And I feel like that is the way you get results. If I were to talk about my 2 highest level modus operandi, it would be these 2. I believe execution eats strategy for lunch. Give me an average strategy and a great team and a good execution plan, and I will deliver good results. Give me a great strategy and an average team and an average execution plan, and you will be disappointed and we will have missed an opportunity. That's the way I see the world. And it is proven out to me more often than not. The second thing is customer centricity. Operate as the customer's number one. And so easy to say, but not necessarily easy to happen, right? And that's the thing about companies. Customer centricity is engaging customers often about where we're going, really using them as feedback, not doing a presentation to them when they come to your office, but really engaging them, having advisory boards that really sit and are stakeholders in your future of a product or direction, right? Rewarding and acknowledging employees for doing great work for customers. Right? It's little things. You can say we're very customer oriented, but it's the actions behind it that really are important. So let's talk about execution. My belief is that the foundation for execution is a great culture, right? And why is that so important? Why do I believe that a great culture, and culture was something we never talked about early on, and now it's a very hot topic, right? But it can kind of get out of hand, if you will, from what people talk about. In 2003, culture was, well, this place is really down right now, let's go have a beer bash. That'll get the culture up, right? Now, it's much richer than that, and it's a much bigger deal. Our employees, because employees are more important now, CEOs have recognized that employees are a much more important part of the success story. But employees are pretty, they want a lot out of their company. They want to see community service. They want to see the company really care about employees. They want to see the company allow employees to be participants in the direction of the business where possible. So it's a much harder investment to make, but it pays off if you can get there. So culture. If you have a culture that sits around a set of common values, right? What do we want to achieve as a company? What do we want to achieve for employees? And what do we want to achieve for community? You have alignment, right? The best compliment anybody can give me if they come in after they've talked to a bunch of folks on my team is that, wow, everybody seems on the same page. You guys all describe the problems the same way and the opportunities. That's alignment. That's key. If you have alignment, your employees are more engaged. Wow, we have a common set of direction. We're all talking off the same book. Employees are engaged. They get excited. If they're more engaged, they want to be at the company. That's when the CEO starts smiling. Hey, they're here at 6 o'clock. They're here at 6:30. I'm getting emails at 7 o'clock at night, right? And if they want to be at the company, productivity goes up, right? But you have to pay off. You have to pay them in having a rich culture that they see you spend time getting aligned with them and you spend time on their needs as well as the customer and the investor. Elements of a great culture. These are very important parts of tenet for me. And this is, again, I believe culture is a really important part of successful leadership. A great team. And this is the hardest thing for leaders to achieve. And because it is so easy to cut corners because the pressure of filling the role or the pressure of delivering results gets in the way. But compromising on the team happens. I'm on a board of a company, and the CEO, I tried to warn him about that this guy checked a bunch of boxes, but he missed on 2 or 3, and they may not seem like a big deal now, but as you look at his organization and its growth, they're gonna haunt you. And I said, you may be in trouble a year from now. And instead of going out looking for more, he filled the box. Young CEO, it happens, but those are the kinds of things you really have to avoid. You have to get to where you really don't compromise. Some compromise is always happening, but you really have to be focused on it. Shared values. What are your values as a company? If you don't have values, you don't have a compass for employees. They do not know what you stand for. And so, we didn't have them at Quorum, we developed them. We didn't have them at Convio, we developed them. I had them at Bizarre Voice. I had to retweak them a little bit to get the company thinking more about customers. Really important to have, what do we care about? Are we hiring people along this line? Are we using them? Are we living to them? It's really important. Accountability. What I say about accountability is do what you say you're going to do. And if you don't, really take it personally. That's what accountability is to me. We all miss goals. But when you miss a goal, it hurts. And you're showing me, hey, this is what I'm doing to make sure I make that goal next time. Transparency, overused word today, all over the place. But transparency is communication. One of the things as a leader I learned is that if I'm not communicating to my employees, they will immediately assume something is starting to go wrong, that things are getting negative, right? If you're not having a company meeting or a regular team meeting, the employees' natural instinct is saying, okay, something's wrong, they're not really communicating, we don't have anything, we don't really know how the company's doing, it must be doing bad, right? And so what I mean by transparency is open communication. The employees deserve to know what's going on the bridge. Easily said. Quorum, no company meetings, right? No touch base with employees. Employees, the gap between management and employees was very wide, and now it's starting to close. We're starting to see that close. The end game as a leader, as a CEO for high-performing organizations is trust. And you have to go this way to get to trust, right? And what I mean by trust is that they may not agree with a decision that your CEO or you as a leader just made, but because you communicate, because you live the values of the organization, they're going to give you the benefit of a doubt that you made a decision that was right for the company, and they will move on, right? And so or if you make another decision, they will get behind it even faster because they trust that you have their best interest as well as the company's best interest in balance, and you're taking that to heart, right? And just with your own teams, do you have trust? And I would tell you right now, I'm not where I'd like to be yet with my team at Quorum. It took me a while at all the other companies. And what I mean by trust is, are you comfortable being vulnerable with each other? I don't know how to do this. I'm not really good at this, right? I would argue that there's a bunch of you in this room that probably aren't comfortable with that conversation with your immediate team. But when you do that, when you say, I don't know this, you immediately raise the trust bar. Because if Gene's going to be vulnerable, I feel comfortable being vulnerable to him. This is not what I'm good at. I need help. And if you don't have those conversations, I assume you know what to do because you didn't tell me you didn't. And then what happens 3 months down the road? We made a mistake. It didn't go right. Yeah, that's what happened. So, trust. One example of culture and crisis. And we all have crisis as leaders. We're not making goals. It's not happening. But one example that hit me really hard back at Convio. This showed up. Daily Cause is one of the strongest blogs for the progressive community. Now remember, Convio serves nonprofits. 65% of nonprofits lean left, 35% lean right. He said, hey, he was kind of referring to political campaigns, but you may have known about Convio and the Dean campaign, but now they're working with an anti-gay hate group. Boycott these guys. These guys suck. We were working with an organization in 2005 that said, we think marriage should be defined between a man and a woman. In 2005, that was a hot debate. It's not anymore, but it was back then. In my organization, we didn't pick sides. We worked with whoever. We did allow employees not to work with organizations they couldn't identify with. So this was challenging. As a small company, I said, okay, we got real problems here. My first instinct was to lash back. No, you've got it all wrong. We're really a great company. We are not this way. We believe in the gay community very strongly. And that was the wrong thing to do. So I went out on a listening tour with a bunch of people. And I'm not going to go through the whole plot here for the sake of time. But what changed this whole dynamic for me is a gay employee at Convio went on a blog and said, I just need to tell you all that Convio is the most gay-friendly organization I have ever worked with, starting with domestic partner benefits. In 2005, domestic partner benefits was very new, all the way through just allowing me to work on organizations I want to, et cetera. And to be a company, we have to work with all types of organizations, and I respect that. I don't support that organization, but I respect that. That post does not happen without a great culture and trust. That gentleman, I'm not gonna, it's oversaying it, he single-handedly saved us, but he put water on the fire very quickly, and that was a huge deal for us. Okay, 2 more slides. Diversity is a competitive advantage. I really get tired of, people pointing to something and saying, all white guys up there and all that. I mean, I don't support it, but I think we need to shift the conversation to the fact that you're going to be a way better company, in my opinion, if you have a diverse set of people at the table. Okay, that's the point. And why is that? Well, my leadership style is I like to listen to all my teams on an issue, and I want different ideas. I want people coming from different backgrounds. And I will tell you, I would say I give myself a pretty high grade on gender diversity. I've had a lot of great women leaders in my time, and women and men invariably look at problems very differently, and they are both right so many times on a bunch of topics. And it's just crazy for anybody to think differently. We are different people, but man, oh man, I want that opinion. And I'm very biased, by the way, in sales. I think women are better sellers than men because they listen better. They just are better listeners, and listening is 70% of being a great salesperson. So it's a competitive advantage, and if you focus on it and you should always still hire the best person you can find, but diversity is a key competitive advantage. If you focus on it, you can get to where you want to be, where you have all voices, all backgrounds being heard. I have not done as well with ethnicity and other types of background. I'd probably give myself a C. I'd probably give myself an A- on gender diversity. It's tough, but if you work at it, you can get there. Okay, my last topic is boards. Ugh. This is this is an area that I have got low grades early in my career, and I've had all 3, venture-backed, VCs, I've been a public board, and private equity. This is, in my opinion, one of the most suboptimal relationships in business. Let's talk about venture for a second. Venture guys come in. First guy comes in, he pays $10 for the company. Next gal comes in, she pays $30 for the company. Next gal comes in, she pays $50 for the company, right? And time keeps going on. The $10 guy's going, when are we selling? I'd like to get returns. $50 person's going, what are you talking about? I just got here. So your board meetings are priorities flying all over the place. Venture guys are not operators, they're idea people, so they're flying ideas. And so I finally realized I'd say, okay, I walk out with 3 things from you guys, because it was 10. And it's just kooky stuff, right? I mean, really good ideas and everything, but not helping me be a better operator as the company scales, and different feelings of value and what we should do with the company. So you have to kind of rein them in. Public boards, they make a lot of money. They're there. I turned over my board at Bizarre Voice because I was a turnaround and I needed to get people to help me turn around. I turned over the whole board, and they're making money. They get RSUs, so they sell those every year. Good income. Punching the clock, coming to the board meeting, giving me a little bit of advice, but are they engaging? I'm in the middle of hell. Turnaround. DOJ hates us, right? Are they, kind of. No, right? And I probably needed to manage that harder. I will tell you, if you have a board, you have to set the boundaries and you have to ask for what you want. Private equity guys, they're on 11 boards, right? So they'll spin circles around you on the spreadsheet about the P&L, what's going on, the balance sheet, cash flow, what's happening there. But they don't have time to engage on market dynamics, what's going on, which product do I need, what product should we be thinking about? Have you guys done an analysis on your product profitability yet? And all the, right? You got to kind of, and so it's a weird relationship with boards, And for those of you that are heading towards the CEO one day, manage your board, because they will not manage you. Manage them, tell them what you need. I need you to help me with this problem right away. I finally figured that out, but I bumbled, fumbled, stumbled around because I said, hey, you guys I work for you guys. So those are my top picks for you guys. I want to thank you all very much. I also want to give you the opportunity to call me, text me, send me an email. I think we have time for some questions. I hope we do. We have a few. I ran over a little bit, but sorry. Anybody have any questions?
Jim O'Connor, were you able to discern why the DOJ came after you in such a small market
Yes.
segment?
Young, aggressive attorney, wanted to make a name for himself. His boss wasn't paying attention and kind of let him run with it. They took it to the Ninth Circuit in California, and the judge had never heard a antitrust case before, and was very accommodating. Basically told him, when we said, hey, Amazon is the biggest provider of ratings review and the biggest retailer, he said Amazon is a different thing. We're talking about everything outside of Amazon. And so he eliminated Amazon from consideration, which put a hole in the case. The other thing I will tell you, though, on our case with the DOJ is the documents internally between the company on this acquisition were horrible. We'll be able to raise prices. It'll eliminate our only significant competitor. These are all in emails, right? And that was our death knell. But it was a terrible case. And by the way, when Blackbaud bought Convio, we had about 75% of the nonprofit space at the time. Flew through like you know what through a goose. Other questions?
Yes. Would your presentation be available from Asking Sunny?
Absolutely.
Okay. Second question is, you said you liked human resources and you like finance and have a good relationship with both. How or what is it about those two organizations in your company that makes or breaks the business?
Well, HR needs to be the pulse of my culture. I can't set culture. I can catalyze it, right? The employees have to set culture. I set guardrails for what the culture, we can't be over here on culture. We need to be inside these guardrails. So HR is the guardian of my culture. And finance is helping me understand, is the nose of the airplane pointed too high, too low, et cetera. And so my commentary is basically, when I was at HP, I was very young. A woman named Nancy Anderson was general manager. She took me out to lunch, and she told me, I asked her, what do you attribute your success? She says, well, one of them is I put my head of finance very close and my head of HR. Because those people will screw you up if the people side is going badly and the numbers are going badly. And so that was kind of the admonishment I got, and I've kind of always stuck with that.
Yes, you'd said earlier on you were with a online recruitment site. What was your position at that?
Oh, at Career Builder, I was head of sales and marketing.
Okay, what attracted you about that company to join them?
So the CEO was a hell of a sales guy. I lived in Houston, Texas, at Compaq on the 8th floor with my first real executive assistant. I was vice president of marketing for the Compaq server line. And Compaq was going through a whole bunch of changes. And he called me up and said, I've got this startup, and I think it's a great idea. Now, remember, in 1996, frothy internet, wow, what's going on? I mean, it was wild. And what attracted me was, he's right. I mean, the newspaper is the worst place to look for a job, right? And this internet thing is absolutely compelling. So we packed up the kids, like the Beverly Hillbillies, and, sorry, okay, boomer. We went to Washington, D.C., and the office, I moved into a strip mall office, leaky roof. We were watching job seekers hitting the site looking for jobs. You got to get jobs, so the job seekers come, and we're hundreds of hits a day. We thought that was cool. So I mean, what attracted me was the vision, and that we could do it. And I mean, 3.5 years we went public, still a brand out there now. Rob McGovern, who's the CEO, is incredibly visionary, and I lapped every bit of that up. Yes. Is it just me or is it warm in here?
A little bit. I enjoyed your comments about the relationship between the CEO and the triangle of people within the business world. What pitfalls would you watch out for in the small business space, where CEO and investor is really the same person?
Well, the pitfall I would coach you on is to not get too tangled up in, think long term as much as you can. And to think long term, you're thinking about your team and your customers, right? As you're the owner, and invest for the long term return. You can always pull back and say it's time to sell the company, it's time to do something different, but don't get too short-sighted. Think about where do you want the company to be, keep reinforcing the employees, the direction you want it to go, where we're going, give them something to latch onto, and obviously do a great job with your customers. Hi.
Hi, Anna Ryman. Thanks for all of the thought that you put into this presentation. Could you talk to us about the different turning points in your career? Like, how did you think through the next move? Did people approach you, or were you looking for another job? I know the one situation you got fired.
Yeah, the firing was huge. I actually made a terrible career choice after the firing. I didn't go into that, but I did what I told you happens when you rush and you're in a hurry. I took a job as a VP, and it was the worst job, and I ended up moving on very quickly. But turning point for me career-wise was, I left out part when I came back to Texas after Career Builder. I went back to work for a big company, Dell, in Austin. The guy who hired me at another job hired me back at Dell. Hated it. Once you go small, it's really hard to go back big. So the biggest thing I did was I really got out and started meeting a lot of people. And I had lunches with venture capitalists. And the biggest VC at Convio called me. I think those guys, I'm not trying to blow my horn here, but I think they were worried about a software company in the nonprofit space. And they were having a hard time finding people. I was a green CEO out of a big company. And we took a chance on each other. I was worried too. I was like, wow, can nonprofits make a decision anytime soon? It was a very straightforward market to do business with, by the way. But the turning point was they took a chance on me, and I went in, and they needed execution, right? They had ideas out the wazoo, but they were executing poorly, and I think that was the turning point. It's just I was the right guy at the right time. But keep your network alive, right? Spend time getting to know other people, getting to know what's going on. Seek counseling. I had several mentors that were very helpful, especially when I got fired. I was reeling and I did assessments of myself, right? And all came back like, hey, you can be kind of an asshole sometimes. So I learned.
I have the last question right
Yes.
over here. Hi. I'm very interested in your time at Convio, thank you, because it had to do with nonprofits.
Yes.
And I work for a nonprofit.
Okay.
So you talked about boards, and this is kind of a threefold question.
Okay, A, B, and C.
Did you have a board at this organization? And if so, how did you handle working with the board, since it was really working with nonprofits and they can be very different than profit organizations?
So we had a normal corporate board. It was venture capitalists had put money in us, and they were a corporate board. We did all the things a business board would do. What they didn't appreciate was the nonprofit market. I think it's a little bit to your point. And one of the things we had to figure out was, one of the biggest challenges we had selling to nonprofits was really understanding where the decision would get made inside the nonprofit to invest in software. Because even the CEO at a nonprofit often does not own that final decision. That was probably our biggest challenge. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but
Yeah. So there are a lot of CEOs or people who come from the profit world
Yes.
into nonprofit world and become CEOs. And working for a nonprofit, I mean, I feel like my nonprofit is pretty up to speed technology, but we could do better.
Sure.
So how would you advise a CEO to kind of move forward in a technical world to keep up to date and help benefit their nonprofits?
Well, the way I would, there's a lot of ways to approach that. I mean, many nonprofits using technology can reach so many more people faster and get their message out faster. There's a whole list of reasons why you should think about it. It's a more engaged, I mean, the biggest challenge with nonprofits is I give and then I go away, right? And retaining those donors. And it's such a stronger medium to cultivate people and continue to build a relationship with them. So what I would tell you is there's a lot of great examples out there of, and you might want to start at the Blackbaud website, which is now the owner of Convio, blackbaud.com, and look at some of the examples they have and see if you can identify people that are like you. But there's a list of, if you want to come up, we can talk more about it, but there's a list of things that I think can really make a difference in the nonprofit space. So I think I'm getting the hook. Thank you all very much. I enjoyed it.
Gene, thanks for a really wonderful presentation. I learned a lot from you, and I think I'm a CEO. So I had a lot of great advice. And for any of you guys out there, especially those who aren't into their fifth or sixth generation yet, really a lot of his points are just really solid, concrete things that when you have a chance to find a mentor like Gene someday, grab him and take him for all he's worth, because finding a great mentor is one of the best things you can do for your life and your career. So take advantage of that, Gene. Just a great presentation. So we hope you enjoyed tonight's discussion. Remember, if you're interested in learning more about Olin's graduate programs, please find Sarah. She'd be happy to discuss that with you. And Ken and Sunny are also available to discuss ways to engage with WashU Olin. If you parked using the hotel's valet, make sure you get your parking ticket stamped by Amy as you leave. And feel free to join us for a after presentation, coffee, desserts, things of that nature. So thank you all for coming. Hope you had a great time. I did.